Do you remember? The sound of boots echoing on cobblestone sidewalks, the smell of coal mingling with the damp morning air, the hum of street markets early in the day. It was the East End of London in the 1960s and 1970s, a place where time seemed to move more slowly, even as the world outside raced toward the future. This was the world captured by David Granick, an amateur photographer born in Stepney, at the heart of the East End. He wasn't a professional, but his images are like portals to that time, portals to a world many of us knew well, but which now feels so distant. Granick began photographing when he was in his 50s. He knew exactly what he was doing. Each image carried a precise date and location. He knew the territory like the back of his hand. He had grown up there, walked those streets, breathed that air, and he knew he was documenting something special, something that would soon disappear. The scars of World War II were still visible, even 2 decades later. Bombed-out buildings, abandoned rubble, demolished houses, all of this was part of the landscape. But there was also life, movement, stories being told on every corner. Take Spitalfields Market, for example. Who hasn't? Pass through there, the makeshift stalls, the shouts of vendors hawking their goods, the aroma of fresh fruit mixed with the scent of wood, dampened by morning dew. It was a living, pulsating place. Each stall had its own story, each face told something different. And there was Granick, with his camera, capturing it all on Kodachrome, a color film that no longer exists today, but whose colors remain vibrant as if they were eternal. He knew these images would be important one day. Perhaps he knew that someone, decades later, would look at them and feel nostalgia. Belhaven Street, 1977. An abandoned house next to modern buildings. It was as if the past and the future were fighting for space, and we, in the middle, were trying to find our place. In 3 Colt Street, 1975, a man pulling a cart points at the camera. Behind him, the silhouette of a 17th-century church and an industrial crane. It was as if the old and the new were in constant dialogue, but the new always won. Progress was inevitable, but there was something melancholic about it, something only those who lived through that era can understand. Watney Market, 1974. How many times did you go there? It was a place of meetings, conversations, laughter, but it was also a reflection of that melancholy time, of the daily struggle to survive. The houses around were worn down, some already demolished. But even so, there was beauty there, a simple human beauty. Chris Dawley Brown, who rediscovered these photos, said something that resonates deeply. The East End was changing rapidly during those decades. The area was very run down. My feeling is that Granick wanted to preserve that post-war melancholy. It's really the last glimpse of a lost paradise. Granick wasn't a professional photographer, but his images are impressionistic, personal. He knew what to include and what to exclude. London is visually chaotic. It's not easy to photograph well, but he managed it. His compositions were precise, careful. He captured the essential, what really mattered. And he used Kodachrome, a film so stable that the images remain as vibrant today as the day they were taken. Thanks to that, we can look at these photos today and feel as if we're there again. In one image, an abandoned house stands under the shadow of the then newly built Stifford Estates, a 17-story housing complex in Stepney Green. In another, an elderly woman in a pink cardigan pauses at her door. The house next to hers has been demolished, but her floral wallpaper is still visible on the side of her home. There's also the photo of a man pulling a horse-drawn cart down 3 Colt Street, pointing at the camera. Behind him, the steeple of a 17th-century church, St. Anne's, and an industrial crane. These contrasts between the old and the new, the traditional and the modern, were omnipresent in the East End of that time. The emergence of these images is extremely timely. The accelerated pace of urban development in today's East End is out of control. Local residents are being pushed out by real estate speculation. These images remind us of what could be lost. They are more than photographs. They are memories, frozen in time. They remind us of who we were, where we came from, and they invite us to preserve that memory so that future generations can also know this piece of history. Because in the end, that's what really matters, remembering. Chris Dorley Brown wrote the introduction to The East End in Colour 1960-1980, recently published by Hoxton Mini Press. In the text, he reflects on the world Granick captured on the brink of great transformations. The photographer knew he was taking the last photos of those docks, steamboats and warehouses before they were replaced by imagined hotels and marinas, writes Dorley Brown. These post-port utopias would soon be updated into steel and glass. Businesses, shameful monuments of late capitalism. The future was in a distant haze, just around the corner. But Granick wasn't interested only in the future. He was interested in the present, in the here and now. He captured everyday moments with an almost poetic sensitivity. He knew the East End was in transition, that those streets, markets and people would soon be replaced by something new, something unknown, and he wanted to document it before it was too late. There's something profoundly human about these images. They remind us that behind every building, every street, every market, there are real stories. Stories of people who lived, worked and loved in that place. Stories of struggle, resistance and hope. Stories that shaped the East End and, by extension, shaped London. When we look at these images today, we feel a mix of emotions. Nostalgia, yes, but also admiration. Admiration for a man like David Granick, who had the vision and dedication to document the world around him. Admiration for the people in these photos who continued living their lives despite the difficulties. And admiration for the East End itself, a place that even in ruins never lost its soul. The East End has changed. We've changed. But these images remain as an echo of what we once were. And who knows? Maybe one day someone will look at them and feel what we feel now, nostalgia,